we have the chance to have here, as we say in French, en présentiel, physically, Hilla Dayan, who came directly from Amsterdam. So your topic tonight will be, quotation mark, antisemitism in their genes, quotation mark, countering remembrance and ignorance. There's no light, I cannot hardly read. So, I'm sorry, but I'm a bit old. It's not possible to have some light because I cannot read, or some or a phone with a light. I'm sorry. It's okay, Dalia, it's okay. So, Hilla Dayan, you are an anthropologist and sociologist. You are a lecturer at Amsterdam University College. Your research includes a discourse on antisemitism in Europe, Europe-Israel relations, heritage and memory politics, as well as critical studies of the Israeli regime. You are also, as an activist, a co-founder of Gate 48, a platform for critical Israelis in the Netherlands, and also a co-founder of Academia for Equality that works for the democratization of Israeli academia and society. Your current research project is about Europe and Middle Eastern Jews, memory, heritage, and post-colonial entanglements. Now, it's up to you.
I hope I can see. Oh, it's very dark here. Can I stand there?
I don't know.
There I have a bit more light. Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, a little lower. Yes, like that, it's perfect. Wow, everyone, thank you. Is everyone surviving? Sorry for the pun. Are you surviving? Are you okay? Good. I will have to see how to manage my presentation, but for the sake of the translators, oh, wonderful. I will stick to the script. So first of all, thank you, Martina, for all the organizers for this amazing opportunity to be also speaking along with two of my idols, Nurit and Amira. They are my idols, and I'm sure you understand why. I am very, very glad to be here with you in person and as a fellow activist as well. I'm going to take you today first to the south of France and then to my beloved city, Amsterdam, where I live in since 2003. And I think, I don't want to promise too much, that we're going to end this conference with a little bit of hope. I hope so. Okay. So, in the fall of 2023, I spent a few months doing research in the archives of the city of Marseille. And my book project is on North African Jews who passed through the city in the 1950s. And in my research, I'm interested in examining the connection between Jewish and Muslim migration to post-war Europe. And also, not just the past, but in minority relations in Europe today, in the context of Israel, Palestine, and anti-Semitism. So I was in Marseille when the attack on October 7 caught me. And like everyone, I was, of course, devastated and in shock, deeply worried about the catastrophe we all saw coming. Martina, can you do the first slide? Thank you for your help. Only a few days after October 7, on October 13, France was shocked by a violent attack. A literature teacher in a high school in the city of Arras was murdered by a former student, a young man of Chechen origin, who was said to be known to the security services for his Islamist extremism. This attack sent a chill over France, reminding everyone of the shocking beheading of Samuel Paty, also a high school teacher, just 3 years earlier. And although the murderer in Arras had no connections whatsoever to any specific militant group or a concrete cause, former journalist and right-wing politician Éric Zemmour, supporter of the Great Replacement theory, was quick to attribute the attack in Arras to Hamas. This was, of course, not only a propaganda lie, but a very calculated lie. Days after October 7th, Zemmour was driving the message on TV that Hamas poses an imminent threat to French civilization. The association of all Palestinians and the Palestinian cause with nihilistic global Islamists is misleading and rejected by many Middle East experts. But that was not the point. The point was to mark European minority communities that support Palestine as supporters of Islamist barbarism. And we know this rhetoric, we know this type of framing and propaganda at least since 9/11. But what has been added since is the now strong link made between anti-Semitism and barbarism in relation to Palestine. And we are also familiar with the incessant alarmism about the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe. And this has, of course, direct connection with the visibility and intensity of violence in Israel-Palestine. As you can see in the slide, this is from the news report that I saw Zemmour on. It was reported that 1,040 acts of anti-Semitism have been recorded since the Hamas attack. We never know what kind of acts of anti-Semitism are actually reported to the authorities. What constitutes, in their definition, an act of anti-Semitism? But nobody seems to care. And there is no public discussion about that. All that matters is that anti-Semitism is rising. Now, while I was in Marseille, I went to visit the Edmond Flegg Jewish Community Center, and I noticed there that people were very, very busy with organizing for donations to Israel to support the war and campaigning for Israeli hostages. Outside the center, I saw this graffiti that you see on the slide. And the graffiti depicts the Israeli hostages as victims of anti-Semitism and sexism. Now, it really struck me because you are not going to see a graffiti like that in Israel, in Tel Aviv, or any other place in Israel. There, you will probably see graffiti depicting the hostages as victims of government abandonment, hafkara, as we call it in Hebrew. But so this graffiti is a specific mix portraying the hostages as victims of deprived sexual predators and Holocaust victims. You can only encounter this mix in Europe. The charge of sexism, however, to be fair, is in response to commonplace denials by pro-Palestinian groups of any wrongdoing of Hamas. We know that some of the heinous crimes committed on October 7th included also sexual crimes, but they are all the acts are sometimes glorified or denied, or strangely both glorified and denied at the same time. So this could be one explanation. But we are all aware of the Islamophobic incitement that a great danger stems from this barbarism, right? Too many Arabs in Europe. And I want to emphasize how this imagination is always linked to a sense in Europe of having too little Jews, the legacy of the Holocaust, of course. Jews are implicated in Islamophobic imaginations, placed in antagonistic relations in a racially informed social order, whether they like it or not. Minorities, however, receive very different, skewed, and appallingly skewed and unequal treatment. There are enormous resources invested in Jewish communities, however small, going well beyond just erecting massive security apparatuses and driving all sorts of, from top-down conservative and less conservative revival projects. Money pumped into very small communities. The other minorities who are actually in need of social investment, much more, are subject to repression, surveillance, and police brutality. The general public is asked and encouraged to take just one side, the side of the too little. However, most of the time, the average citizen in Europe is happy to be in a position of indifference to the spectacles of minority antagonisms. We know that this is a spectacle. It is always the other's problem. Jews, Muslims, the other's problem, not our problem. So I would say this is the first. Amira spoke about forgetting. Nurit spoke about forgetting. I'm bringing it to you to the European context. So I'm naming it the first forgetting. Forgetting that Europe and Europeans cannot be neutral, and they are not just neutral spectators. Jews were once the barbarians in Europe, and they were betrayed, first and foremost, by their own societies. As my Muslim friends in Amsterdam say, we are not descendants of those who succumbed to Nazi barbarism. Dutch white society is. In the Netherlands, an archive containing a database on collaborators with the Nazis recently opened after 70 years. I am curious to see what new research into society-wide collaboration can shed light on. How many family histories and secrets would be unleashed? I have a feeling that we are on the verge of a new trend, a social history turn in Holocaust studies. And as an Israeli, you know what that means now that you heard Nurit's textbook presentation. As an Israeli, as an Amsterdamer, I'm obsessed with the Holocaust. So I have an insatiable curiosity to learn more about the Holocaust. And I think that the social history turn is going to be very interesting and significant development. Now, let me take you to my city, Amsterdam. Thank you. And the recent so-called pogrom on the eve of the Kristallnacht commemoration. Each year, November 11th is an important day of commemoration since many Jews fled to the Netherlands in the aftermath of the Kristallnacht. Let's watch a couple of minutes from the Sky News video that summarizes the events that happened in November this year in Amsterdam.
Violence in Amsterdam left at least 5 people injured and dozens have been arrested. But what happened?
Everything should be done to track down and prosecute the perpetrators. This is simply anti-Semitic violence against Israelis that actually defies description.
Supporters of Israeli football club Maccabi Tel Aviv arrived in Amsterdam ahead of their UEFA Europa League match against Amsterdam club Ajax. On Wednesday, social media videos, verified by Sky News, show 3 men tearing down Palestinian flags from outside of homes. A second Palestinian flag was pulled down from a building in a clip verified by Sky News. Another video uploaded to social media shows a man being chased through the street with a caption that reads, "Watch and enjoy 6 Zionists chased away, free Palestine." On Thursday, just before the game, crowds of Maccabi fans were filmed singing racist and anti-Arab songs. On that same evening, a pro-Palestine demonstration took place at the Anton de Compline Square after authorities banned organisers from holding it outside the arena. Later that evening, during the match, Israeli supporters appeared to disrupt the minute silence for Valencia flood victims with chants, whistles and fireworks. A video posted on social media shows a large group of hooded men dressed in black running down the street and striking people at random.
But I want to make clear, we are used in Amsterdam that there can be tensions. There are many demonstrations and protests, and we are always prepared for them. And of course, they are related to the situation in the Middle East and the ongoing war in Israel and Palestine. But what happened last night is not a protest. It has nothing to do with protest or demonstration. It was crime.
People with Palestinian flags were seen marching on the streets. Maccabi supporters say they were beaten and attacked on the streets of the Dutch capital.
It's the same feeling that I felt in the morning of the 7th of October.
Sky News could not independently verify all of the footage shown. 62 people have been arrested and prosecutors are considering anti-Semitic motives. 5 people were also taken to hospital but have since been discharged. Dutch and Israeli leaders denounced the attacks as anti-Semitic and even referred to it as a pogrom.
Yes, so you heard the Maccabi fan, and that was indeed the sentiment that flooded all my WhatsApp groups of Israelis in Amsterdam. Israelis responded to reports on what is happening in real time in panic.
Violence in Amsterdam left at least 5...
Thank you. Reflecting October 7 trauma, right? There were rumors that proved completely false that people have spread about kidnappings, hostages, and rapes. So the night of the riots, I was actually happened to be in the city center to attend the official Kristallnacht ceremony. This is held in the beautiful candlelit Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam. And I went, I'm not going usually there, but I went because I wanted to see this year if this ceremony is going to say anything about Gaza. Of course, I was disappointed, but not surprised. Still, I was still disappointed that no one even expressed a mild wish to ceasefire. Just that. No. Instead, victimization ran high. The ceremony speakers were not commemorating the Holocaust. They commemorated October 7. Speakers said all the cliches about rise of anti-Semitism, and they blamed the authorities for neglect. And this was preposterous, considering the unbelievable mass police presence just outside the synagogue. So you have a synagogue surrounded by police presence, and they complain about neglect. The news spread like lightning about the pogrom night in Amsterdam. Dutch politicians, as you could see in the video, even the king himself, were quick to make references to the Holocaust. On Friday, in the middle of the day, the next day, the city mayor, Femke Halsema, you also saw here, gave a press conference together with the driehoek, what we call the driehoek. It's the triumvirate of the mayor, the chief of the police, and the public prosecutor. And you can turn another slide, yeah. So at the press conference, they announced that they are investigated. Oh, no. Keep it. Anyways, they announced that they are investigating anti-Semitic motives. For instance, the call for Jodenjacht, Jew hunting. Jodenjacht, a Dutch word, right? That ran on certain youth telegram groups. Now, the term Jodenjacht, Jew hunting, is a very, very specific to Amsterdam Holocaust expression that has become very normalized as part of slang and football fandom subculture. So for foreign ears, it would have made sense to investigate the charge of anti-Semitism, but not to us, not to anyone who is from Amsterdam, who is familiar and with how widespread and normalized the use of the term is. What were they thinking of investigating? This type of investigation could only be specifically targeting the Moroccans or Moroccan youth, who are often said to have imported to the Netherlands their anti-Semitic baggage. As a Dutch politician put it, it's in their genes. But the use of Jodenjacht by the youth itself proves exactly the opposite. No, Jodenjacht is not a term imported from Morocco. It is completely indigenous, and it belongs to Dutch culture, to which the third and fourth generation of Moroccan descent are born. So on that note, I think now we can move to the next slide. The second forgetting, or perhaps better call it ignorance, is the ignorance about migrant baggage and migrant culture. For those of my friends in Amsterdam who are intimately familiar with the uniqueness of Moroccan heritage and memory of the Jews, suggesting that anti-Semitism is part of Moroccan Muslim culture is just not just bluntly racist, it's also shockingly ignorant. The interest of researchers in recent years in Morocco's modern history, in its unique Jewish-Muslim history, and not only that, in the commemoration culture of the Jews in Morocco, is just exploding, as I show you here in this slide. This is Omar Baum. He's from Morocco. He's the top scholar of Moroccan Jewish history, and he has established in UCLA in the United States a program of Moroccan Jewish studies, a Muslim Moroccan man in the United States. So there is a lot and there is enough historical evidence to suggest that Moroccan heritage could and ought to be a rich source to tap into, from which another story about this minority culture and heritage may emerge. Moroccan heritage is an antidote to anti-Semitism, not the problem. And I will give just a few examples by way of telling you something about the Dutch commemoration culture. So in the Netherlands, on a nationally televised commemoration ceremony, every year the Holocaust is remembered on May 5th. Who is invited to the ceremony? Elderly, among others, elderly army veterans who fought the colonial war in Indonesia. They are honored in the ceremony. Their victims overseas are forgotten. A few years ago, Ahmed Marcouch, the mayor of Arnhem, a Holocaust education enthusiast, he organized a culturally sensitive Holocaust education tour for youth of Moroccan descent. Thanks to his initiative, we know about the burial grounds of Moroccan soldiers somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Zwolle, the Netherlands. I'm asking myself, why are colonial veterans honored in our national commemoration ceremony and not these soldiers who were recruited into colonial battalions and by the Allied forces and died for Europe's liberation from the Nazis? Another example is that in the 1940s and 50s, Moroccan nationalists were advocating in Europe and in the US for independence from France. And strikingly, they considered in their advocacy their relations to the Jews as one of the strongest cards they have. And they promised Western powers to absorb Jewish refugees from Europe, saying, we are going to solve many of their problems in terms of world attitudes and opinions. I'm quoting the Moroccan nationalists. So these are just tip of the iceberg, couple of examples for how Moroccan heritage and history can serve as an antidote to anti-Semitism. In the aftermath of November 7 riots, we can turn the slide, in Amsterdam and in the weeks that followed, the city was reeling. It really took a long time to calm things down. There was anger at the sensationalist media coverage, and the Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof, whose first response was to say, this is an integration problem. Mayor Halsema, who you see here in a picture that I took, was attacked on all sides. In an attempt to calm things down, she held town hall meetings with various communities. I attended one. This is the one that this picture was taken in. I attended a meeting with about 200 members of the Jewish community. Everyone was upset, angry, emotional. The anger was directed at her, specifically, Halsema. Some called her to resign. For what? For insisting to allow pro-Palestinian demonstrations in our city. Halsema tried to reason with this crowd, to explain why the demonstrations had nothing to do with the riots, and why the massive police force didn't stop what the city argues was new forms of violence, which they called hit-and-run attacks. Why was it a failure to stop these attacks? This apologetic stance of the city authorities and the grand gestures, including of Halsema herself, expressing heartfelt understanding for Jewish fear of pogroms, did not suffice and did not impress anyone in this meeting. No resources invested and no recognition given is ever enough to satisfy the Holocaust, quote, psychosis, as one of my informants calls it. Meantime, the extreme worry for Amsterdam Jews, which were not even the objects of these attacks, right? They were completely unrelated to Amsterdam Jews. So, meantime, this extreme worry about them, the complete ignoring of the high emotion of the other city communities, where families feared police retributions after that night, Halsema was blamed for throwing the Muslims under the bus. The discourse was completely polarized. We can switch. In an opinion piece I published in Et Parool, that's a widely circulated Amsterdam newspaper, what I tried to do is to turn the attention away from these highly emotional, upset communities. I was trying to argue that it's not about the Jews and the Muslims, and that what should worry us all as citizens of this democracy, the Netherlands, is the determination of right-wing governments and the populists to use this event to advance anti-democratic repression, like curbing and eliminating the right to demonstrate. If anything, anti-Semitism and all forms of hate crimes, I argued, must be fought with more, not less, democracy. So, to almost wrap up, don't get me wrong, I do not suggest that nothing out of the ordinary happened in Amsterdam in November. This hit-and-run violence could have easily gone totally out of control. It was an atmosphere of lynching in the city. It was terrible. And it could have targeted innocent fans, although for some in Amsterdam, no fan was perceived as innocent. They were all seen as IDF soldiers marching on our city. I was honestly, personally relieved to hear that it all ended up in light injuries. However, the fact remains this was not a pogrom. It was a toxic case of football hooliganism lit ablaze by the impact of Israel-Palestine. And here in Europe, we must not forget that the war in Israel-Palestine is also a propaganda war. And the aggressive interventions of Israel in the Dutch politics and in Amsterdam politics, Amsterdam authorities handling the crisis. And I don't have time to go into that, but I can answer questions about it later. Israel aggressively intervened. So what can be done? This is the part where I really want us to think, what can be done? How can we deal with these pressures constructively? How do we address a city-street dynamic where for one person, even the sight of kafia or Palestinian flags are already terrorizing? And for the other person in our city, a Jewish Magen David, like my children are wearing, right, is seen as a provocation, calling for harassment. So my answer is education, education, education. Not the way that Nuri described it, right? What kind of education do I mean? What I mean is not Holocaust education, but democratic education. Education about the right of expression, the rights of minorities, the right of association, the right of demonstration. Education about pluralism and the need to have everyone's rights respected. In developing educational tools, we must avoid shoving Holocaust down youth's throat. I can tell you in my family, it's a big disaster. My kids don't like education Holocaust from me or from their schools. So the teenagers really hate it. And they're fed up with it. They grew up with it also in the Netherlands, from the elementary school all the way through their high school education. Our education about it must be enlightened. It must be pedagogically sophisticated and definitely culturally sensitive, perhaps taking a more indirect route than what we are used to. Why are we taking always the kids to Anne Frank's house at least 1 or 2 times in their lives and having them only do that and not know anything about other things that happened? For instance, that the Holocaust also spilled over to North Africa. So to give you a very brief example for what I mean by education, we can switch a slide. Thank you. In 2022, I traveled with my students from Amsterdam to see a very, very special exhibition curated by an Arab institution in Paris, Institut du Monde Arabe. I'm sure many of you know about it. The exhibition was on the history of Jews in the Middle East. It was a simple but very illuminating exhibition for the broader public, showing rich legacies of a Judeo-Islamic civilization. A Judeo-Islamic civilization that existed multi-millennial. And also educating about the impact of European colonialism on Jews and Muslims in the Middle East region. So around this exhibition visit, we also toured neighborhoods in Paris where Maghrebi Jewish and Muslims' daily interactions are commonplace. And we discussed tensions around Israel-Palestine, of course, about violence and about call for boycotts, including boycotting this exhibition. I make a case here, and I hope to further the case in Amsterdam when I'm, that's kind of my mission now, for education that expands knowledge, specifically about the fantastic history of a Judeo-Islamic civilization and specifically Jewish Morocco. If we pay attention to less known chapters, such as when Muslims and Jews banded as partners against the Vichy government anti-Semitism in North Africa, we can help reduce ignorance and foster intercommunal communication, reduce suspicion, and strive to find ways forward beyond entrenched, victimized narratives. Finally, I'm almost done. Unfortunately, sometimes as activists, we have a lot of work to do. And part of this work is internal. In our own circles, we must remind our students and fellow pro-Palestinian activists. Time and again, Israeli society was born not just from the Holocaust, something that we heard about tonight, right? Israeli society was also born from European colonial interventions in the Middle East. Interventions that exacerbated and facilitated Jewish apparatuses of immigration, sometimes enthusiastically, like France. France drove the Jews from North Africa first to its own cities like Marseille, and then shipped them to Israel. So Europe found also a solution to the North African Jews, right? That has ended the multimillennial existence of Jews in the region. So it is Europe that refused to absorb the Middle Eastern Jews that became refugees in Europe or elsewhere and shipped them to Israel. We need to understand that this constitutes at least 50% of the Israeli Jewish population's story, a story that is not heard and undealt with, right? So we need to criticize any fantasies our fellow activists may entertain about a new uprooting or a return of Jews to Europe. Half of Israeli population is not even from Europe. In their scenarios of dismantling settler colonialism, this kind of imagination of uprooting is historically and politically misguided. And needless to say, in our own activism, in our circles, it doesn't do any good for anyone, and especially not to Palestinians, to resort to violence, vandalism, and anti-Semitism. This is not how we want to win hearts and minds, and it undermines collective global struggle to end the Israeli occupation, the genocide, and the aggression, and for Palestinian liberation. I hope I contributed some food for thought and a more hopeful outlook for the future, and I look forward to our discussion. Thank you so much.
We will take some questions now, and we have 10 good minutes, but let's use them as good as possible. Yes.
Hi, I have a question because your viewpoint on all this is contrary to the Israeli narrative. Like, at what point in your life did you reach that change of thinking?
Wow, thank you. We have to travel to when I was 12. That was a long time ago. I grew up in a very averagely racist towards Palestinian, actually kind of centrist, right-wing. My father is a Mizrahi, Likudnik, supporter of the Likud since 1977, and just a normal childhood in Israel. Normal, you see how normal we grew up to be, right? Normal fucked up. And when I was 12, it was the 80s, it was before the first Intifada, I just saw there were still Palestinians on our streets. I grew up in Holon, and there were still Palestinians selling za'atar, selling pita with za'atar, or working in construction. There were a lot of Palestinians, actually, that you could see on the streets, but I never knew who are they, just Arabs, right? And I remember being shocked, discovering, like seeing in my own eyes the kahanis, like bands of, bullies, violent kind of gangs who are just grabbing Palestinians and hitting them. Like I saw the violence in my own eyes. And then I realized, oh my God, this is kahana. I need to read about it. I need to understand what this is about. And then I read a book about the Nazism of this kahana guy, who is an American Jew from America who came to Israel and was considered then extreme. Now all of Israel is kahana, but then it was like, the margins of the margins. And that's when my journey of self-discovery and curiosity about Palestinians and their narrative and their stories began. And I can say I was a Zionist because all of us are born Zionists, right? We're fed Zionists with our mother's milk. So we were born Zionists. I was born Zionist. And this is a long process of unlearning. And for me, it culminated in the 1990s when I arrived to university and I started understanding as a sociologist and the history of the Nakba. And just at one moment, I really distinctly remember through my education how everything collapsed, right? There was no way to not unlearn Zionism, right? Education.
Je vais poser ma question en français. Tu pourras la traduire, moi. Je suis très étonné, après ce que je viens d'entendre, de la force et de la facilité avec laquelle un événement, celui qui vous est arrivé à 12 ans, a pu avoir un impact à long terme sur votre évolution, mais il a quand même fallu un long temps. Parce que
how this one event happened when you were 12 had so much an impact because of the time that you took.
Parce que ce qui me frappe dans le conflit israélo-palestinien et dans l'effort pour essayer de comprendre ce qui ne se passe pas au niveau de l'esprit des juifs israéliens, des Israéliens, la force du déni, la force du
and also is what is not happening in the heads of the Israeli Jews.
Donc,
They are in denial.
le denial, le strength, la force.
And you have a question?
No.
This is to comment.
Wonderful, thank you for your comments. Yeah, it takes a long time to unlearn everything that you grew up with. Yes. Maybe there.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for coming here. I think it's very important. There's a lot of things about that we have to reflect about on how to resist and push back against the genocide of Israel, and I think it's also on us, the Jewish community at large in Europe, to organize more events such as this one. And also, I don't know everyone in this room, so on people who are members of the Jewish community at large to join Jewish Call for Peace and help us organize more, because we need to show that there is another history and there is another present, and we want another future as well. That there is not this mainstream that has the only echo in the press. I wanted to ask a question about also what is going on right now, for example, in Germany, where on one hand, Zionism has been enshrined in the law, because if you want to become German, you have to recognize the state of Israel. So that shows how, okay, Jews, again, by law in Germany, will forever have a twin nationality, whether they are Zionist or anti-Zionist. So it gives us, whether we want it or not, officially again a twin nationality in Germany. And there has been this new anti-immigration law passed, promoted this week, which facilitates deportation for binational. And I want to warn all fellow Jewish people in this room that this will impact us, because if we have a twin nationality again by law, implicit, like any Arab person is implicitly supposed to have a twin nationality even if they haven't, then that means that, again, we are potential targets for these anti-immigration laws. So we need to defend ourselves and acknowledge the threat that is coming again. And I wanted to know what was your opinion about this.
Oh, about Germany, I'm as someone living in the Netherlands, all I can, I always say, oh my God, let's not turn into Germany here, right? That's our main concern, is that it doesn't flow in our direction. It's terrible. I can tell you, speaking of unlearning Zionism, there was a little group of Israelis. I'm part of a group of Israelis that already in 2007 began to be active and established a platform for critical Israelis. In Germany, a small group a few years ago started to organize Israelis, and they called themselves the School of Unlearning Zionism. Interesting, right? And this group was banned. They were not able to get a space to hold meetings in. Speaking of your experience here, it simply amazes me that this country called Germany calls itself a democracy when it disallows people to meet. That's so basic, right? To hold public events, to meet somewhere. So the situation there, I analyzed together with another colleague in an article also in English, is beyond description anti-democratic. So here's my point again. Maybe instead of maybe we need a bit more of that kind of the visibility of the anti-democratic measures need to be upped. We need to up the ante on our struggle to maintain even the most basic liberal understandings of what the rules of the games are in a democracy. So I think, it's a bit of a bland or not so interesting or radical message, but that's the reality that we live in today, that we have to defend the most basic, elementary rights, right?
Okay, so we will take one last question because then we need to wrap up. Yes.
This better be a good one, huh? You gave them a very good question.
I mean, you say that education of the democracy is about recognizing the humanity of people, and also educating about anti-Semitism in the sense of being able to distinguish between real and fake anti-Semitism, the ones that deny the humanity of
it's an interesting typology, real and fake anti-Semitism, and that's something that a lot of people struggled with. So let me mention here a very good initiative. So there's the HERA definition. You all heard of it, right? We all hate it, yes? Everyone here in this room. But okay. So this is a definition suggested by a consortium called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And it's very Israel-focused. It has changed the definition of anti-Semitism to really just being about, Israel critique, basically. As opposed to that, we have a whole 400 scholars of Jewish studies and related disciplines who came together to draft or to issue the Jerusalem Declaration on Antisemitism. So for me, the guidance on that is first and foremost the Jerusalem Declaration on Antisemitism. Check it out. And I'm guided by the experts, right? We need experts. We need experts to also look. Let me say it this way. Why do we need the experts? Because they guide us in how to interpret certain slogans, certain associations, certain attitudes, and I think the Jerusalem Declaration captures it when it says, you know, this is what anti-Semitism is, and it has a broad definition that defines it as a part of a racist understanding targeting a specific group. So a broad and universalizing understanding of anti-Semitism. The problem is that what is happening on our streets? What is happening here, right? When people feel attacked. I've mentioned it, right? People feel attacked by the sight of a Palestinian flag. What can you do about that, right? Nothing. You can only say some behaviors that ultra-Orthodox Jews are suffering from, and that is really on the level of this petty street harassments. They are spitted at, they're shouted at, they are sometimes, aggressively addressed, and sometimes people smash, a window of a restaurant with an Israeli flag. This is what we are talking about in the Netherlands, right? So the context that I know best. So what can you do about these street harassments? And again, this is about education. How do you respect each other in the public sphere? It's about public order. It's about rule of law. It's not about anti-Semitism. It's about how do you behave to each other in a multicultural city? How do you build trust? How do you educate young people to be respectful? And for the existence of different communities and for others that they deem strange. So like the ultra-Orthodox in Amsterdam. So I think, again, that's my point about how to distinguish and what to do, right? Can I say just one thing? One little thing, just, I'm a lecturer, teacher, I don't know. So you see this is very ancient. This was from the exhibition. And the interesting symbol that you see here, what do you see here? The Star of David, right? We immediately recognize it as the Star of David. Now, the interesting thing is that there is a debate about the Moroccan flag, like where did the star on the Moroccan flag comes from, right? So there was an anti-Semitic cartoon that a Dutch cartoonist issued when the Moroccan team won all these games in the World Cup, right? And everybody was shocked by how he depicted the Moroccans, very anti-Semitic cartoon, and the flag. And people were angry at him because they thought that the flag of the Moroccan flag, that he painted a Magen David instead of the real Moroccan star. And to me, that was really striking because researching the source of the Moroccan star was bringing me backwards hundreds of years earlier. This is the ancient stone, right? And hundreds of years earlier in the Middle East, that's a mystical sign that is shared by Jews and Muslims. So there was a football team in Tétouan in the northern Morocco who had their flag, the Magen David and the Moroccan star were their whatever symbols. And they used it interchangeably. So in the Maghreb, this Magen David is a very common sign. And people recognize it also as theirs, as part of Muslim culture. You see what I mean? We just need more of that, more of these kinds of examples for our long and rich heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. we have to close. Clearly, I mean, I will do some announcements, but first I would like to thank you. I mean, to thank our three speakers. I would like to thank you also our volunteering translators, and thank you to the audience for your attention and questions. You will be able to share the video of today. Just go on the YouTube channel of Jewish Call for Peace, which you access through gcp.lu. And I would like to give a special thank to Martina Patton. You can also come here. Okay. Because Martina was the one to initiate the conference and to look for the speakers and to prepare all what is very important for today. Yeah, I think I said it. But maybe what I didn't say about Martina, that she's from the National Association of Italian Partisans. So now the practical announcement. If you took a headset, please bring it back. And we have a colorful donation box somewhere at the other extremity of the room. So please just, if you want to see other events similar to this, any kind of donation is welcome. And last and foremost, you might have heard that there is now a petition to be signed. Just go on petition.lu, and it's a petition to ask for the debate of our Chamber of Deputies to debate the sanctioning of Israel for its policies in Palestine. Every person of 15 years and more can sign if you have a Luxembourg matricule number, which means even if you are a frontalier, you have this number and you can also sign. You don't need to have the Luxembourgish nationality. To walk and live here is enough to give you a right to ask for this debate. So please have a look and sign. Thank you very much. Thank you.